What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And we have quite a bit to talk about, as we had a good number of upsets from last week, such as Stanford, yes, the Cardinal, taking down number 6 Nebraska. What is going on with the Huskers? Are they falling apart? Are they using more young players than normal? And what's been going on with Utah? They lost to Boise State last Monday, and they also lost the Holy War to BYU. But those Cougars are for real. And how about Long Beach State? The Beach taking down number 21 San Diego. I was at that game, and I was live tweeting. I'll be talking about that and more, along with the Durango High School volleyball tournament on the girls volleyball scene. Did Marymount Mater Dei Assumption prove their worthiness, or was there another team that surprised everybody? Set up the net, hand me a volleyball, because I'm about to serve you up some volleyball action here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Monday afternoon. Yes, I am back on my original time. Last week I decided to experiment and go on at 4 p.m., but it unfortunately kind of backfired, but it is what it is, and it's all good in the neighborhood. So without any further delay, let's get on into this volleyball action. But first, we have ourselves a quick word from our sponsors. The first sponsor is the Southern California Warriors. The world of semi-pro sports is unlike any other sports organization. Players pay to play in hopes of so many different outcomes, whether it's playing to get filmed to try out for professional teams, big-time colleges, or just playing to stay in shape. No matter what, all semi-pro players have one thing in common, and that's playing for the love of the game. The SoCal Warriors have been on a quest to earn titles and give players second chances since 2017. Whether you're in Southern California or anywhere in the world, give semi-pro sports a chance if you love your sport. You may get that second chance you have been waiting for as an athlete. And it's always great to represent and support your local semi-pro team, no matter what sport it is. You can follow them on social media at SoCal Warriors, on Instagram at Southern California_Warriors, and on Facebook by typing in the word Southern California and then Warriors. Our second sponsor is Background Check International Businesses. Are you looking to background check a new hire on? Let Kit Freeman take care of that for you. Kit founded and has managed Background Check International Businesses since 1994, and he's here to help you with the screening process. Contact Kit and let him help make the hiring process that much easier. Warning, this business, however, is used for professional background checks and not the use of any crimes such as identity theft or other illegal activity. You can follow them on Facebook by typing in the word Background Check International, then put dash and then BCI. And you can also follow them on their website, www.bcint.com. That's how you can follow Background Check International Businesses. So thank you to those two sponsors for being the official sponsors of IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And you can follow IE Sports Radio on Twitter and on Instagram at IE Sports Radio. You can also follow them on Facebook by typing in the word IE, then the word sports, and then radio in the search bar. And then also check out the website www.iesportsradio.com. So definitely do check us out. We are a bunch of podcasters that love working hard and improving our craft every now and then. So here we go. So there was quite a bit of volleyball that happened this past weekend, and all in all, it was a very fun weekend. So let's start with last Monday. So last Monday, there was an upset that occurred that I didn't even think that was going to happen. But this actually was between Boise State and Utah. Now, Utah was coming off of a big 5-set win over then number 5 Nebraska. But Utah, unfortunately, stumbled against Boise State as they dropped the first set 25-17. Boise State led the entire way, but then Utah came back and took the second set 25-16 in strong fashion. Then the third set, there were 11 ties and 3 lead changes, but Boise State took that set 25-20. And then the fourth set, Boise State took the fourth set 25-21, winning the match, which actually marked the first top 10 upset in quite a while for Boise State. So I know for a fact Boise State is the real deal because they had themselves a strong start to the season, and they're probably, hence the word probably, going to win the Mountain West Conference. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if they did, but if they don't, then c'est la vie, you know. Anyway, so Boise State was led by Lauren Ollinger, who had 16 kills. She hit .333, which was quite nice. Michaela Hansen had 14 kills, and Alyssa Weisinger had 9 kills. Danielle Boss had 42 assists as she was just dishing it out all over the place. And in terms of service aces, Boise State only missed 6 serves, but had 5 service aces as well. So there was that for Boise State. And in terms of blocks, they blocked the ball really well. They had 13 blocks overall, which is a very good stat to have if you are a volleyball team. And in terms of digs, they had 56 digs. 4 players had double-digit digs. 15 went to Boss. 13 went to Lauren Ollinger and Jolie Akima, and Michaela Hansen had 11 digs. And as a team, Boise State hit 252, which is not bad. They did hit below 200 in all of the sets except for set 3, where they hit 571. They only had 1 hitting error, which was quite nice. As for Utah, they were led by Danny Drews, who had 21 kills, but she had 11 hitting errors, so that's not going to get the job done. Zoe Wetherington had 10 kills, but she did hit .278, but she had 5 hitting errors. And then Madeline Robinson had 9 kills as well. In terms of assists, Emily Smith had 35 assists as she handled setter duties. Utah didn't miss too many services. They only had 3 service errors, but they only had 4 service aces as Danny Drews and Megan Yett each had 2. In terms of blocks, Utah had 10 blocks as a team. And in terms of digs, they also had 56 digs. However, it wasn't as distributive as it... Well, actually, no. It was more distributive than it was with Boise State. It's just that there are only 2 players in double digits in terms of digs, as Vanessa Ramirez had 14 and Robinson had 13. And as a team, Utah only hit 186, which is kind of problematic. I thought Utah was better, especially after their win against Nebraska, but I guess sometimes you just have that Saturday hangover, and it's kind of weird having a Monday match. I've never really seen Monday matches, so there was that little upset right there. Then, speaking of Nebraska had themselves a little matchup against Stanford. This was actually their first trip to Stanford since 2017, and it was the first time these two teams met since 2019 when Stanford won their second straight championship. So in the first set, Stanford took the first opening set 25-19. They never trailed and there were no ties, so Stanford was in no danger whatsoever. In the second set, Nebraska took a pretty one-sided set, 25-12. While the ties and lead changes don't do it any justice, it was a one-sided affair. Like, Nebraska just came to play. The third set, Stanford took 25-21. They never trailed, which was quite surprising, and there were only 2 ties. And then the fourth set, it was the tightest of the 4 sets, but Stanford took it 25-23. There were 6 lead changes and 9 ties, so good for Stanford. Stanford, I think, is back. I really think Stanford women's volleyball is back in the building, which is quite nice. It's always good to have that great program back to its dominating fashion. Anyway, so Stanford was led by Katie Baird, who had 21 kills, and she only had 2 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of 47. That is those are very good numbers right there. And then Sammy Francis had 13 kills. She did have 9 hitting errors, but I want to say she's a freshman, actually. I've never even seen her face. It's like, who is Sammy Francis again? And then Kendall Kipp had 11 kills, only 3 hitting errors, so she contributed as well. Stanford had Cammie Miner dish out the assists, as she had 49 assists. Davidson, if you're still listening, Cammie Miner is actually the daughter of former USC men's basketball standout Harold Miner, who Harold Miner got to play in the NBA. So that's a little Snapple fun fact for you. Then Stanford had 5 service aces, but they did miss 12 serves, so their serve ace/error ratio wasn't all that great, but what can you do? Both teams surprisingly had 10.5 blocks, which is quite nice. Both teams had 2 block solo stuffs and 17 block assists, which is quite nice. And both teams actually had 59 digs apiece. Elena Ogilvie had 20 digs, while Baird had 13 digs. Cammie Miner had 8 digs, and Alexa Longway had 7. As Davidson says, baby Jordan. Yup. And Stanford hit 235 for the match, which wasn't bad. I mean, the fact that they won is still amazing. They didn't hit above 300, but they didn't hit under 200. Actually, no, I take that back. Set 2, they hit pretty bad. They only had 10 kills, and they only hit 121. So there's that. As for Nebraska, they were led by... Now, these stats really boggled my mind. Kayla Cafee had 12 kills. She hit 429. And Allie Battenhorst and Lindsay Krause each had 10 kills. Nicklin Hames dished out the assist with 43 assists. Nebraska didn't miss too many serves, as they only missed 3 serves, but they only had 4 aces. So, all in all, their serving was solid. And in terms of their digs distribution, Lexi Rodriguez had 16 digs, while Kenzie Knuckles had 12 digs, and Hames had 11 digs. As a team, Nebraska only hit 189. Now, for those Nebraska fans out there that are probably wondering, where is Lexi Sun? Like, what happened to her? Well, something unusual that happened was that John Cook didn't play Lexi Sun all that much. She only got to play in one set, which she served, and she unfortunately had a service error, and we didn't see much of her. Every Nebraska fan was wondering, where's Lexi Sun? Where is Lexi Sun? So it's quite unusual to see Lexi Sun not getting a whole lot of playing time. I get that Cook is trying to give some of his younger players more playing time for the future, but Lexi Sun is kind of your star player and your go-to player. But I have heard that she has been struggling, so I don't know what's going on with Nebraska. I also should note that Nebraska did lose to Louisville in straight sets on Saturday. So it's kind of surprising to see Nebraska struggling. But they do start Big Ten play. I'm sure they'll turn it around then, but their competition is going to start to stiffen up a bit, especially with how good Ohio State is, and Wisconsin, and Minnesota starting to get better. But we'll talk a little bit more about the Big Ten in a little bit. So, next upset we had was Florida State defeating Florida. This was quite surprising, as I totally forgot about this matchup, if I'm being honest. I was like, wait, this is actually a matchup? And I was thinking, should I put this on my noteworthy matchups? And I was like, nah. Big mistake by me, because Florida State is actually doing well this season. It just doesn't show within their body of work. But Florida State is having an underrated season, as Florida actually took the opening set 26-24. There were 12 ties and 8 lead changes, but the Gators took the first set. Keep in mind, this was played in Florida State at the Tully Gymnasium. And then the second set, Florida State rebounded and took that set 25-15. Now, there were 8 ties and 4 lead changes, but I was very surprised to see Florida just getting thumped in that set. And then the third set, Florida State never trailed and there were no ties as they took that third set 25-19. The fourth set, Florida got off to a much better start, but then Florida State really came back firing on all cylinders, and they eventually wound up winning that fourth set 25-20, giving them the match, and it was a very big win for Florida State as they were also honoring one of their former players who passed away, which it was a very fitting win for Florida State, as it's quite amazing that they were able to pull off that victory considering, obviously Florida is a very talented team, but the fact that Florida State was able to beat Florida on their home floor speaks to high volumes of how good the ACC is and how good Florida State is and how no one should be sleeping on that team. And also, Florida State honored one of their former players in Brianna Berry, who unfortunately passed away, and they honored her by having one of her favorite treats, donuts. I don't think the players got to have donuts before the game because that's not really good for the body, but you know what I mean. Anyway, so as for the stats for Florida State versus Florida, Florida State was led by Morgan Chacon, who had 14 kills, only 3 hitting errors, while Corey Lewis had 12 kills. She hit 500 and she only had 2 hitting errors. And Audrey Koenig added 10 kills, but she only hit 185. Lily Tessier added 42 assists, and she chipped in 2 kills as well. And then Emma Clothier had 9 kills to boot as well. Florida State really served the ball well. They had 8 service aces and only 4 service errors. That is a very good ratio right there. In terms of blocks, both teams had 7 blocks. And in terms of digs, Florida State had 49 digs. 17 went to Emery Dupas, who had 17. Chacon had 14 digs. And that was pretty much it. Their next dig leader was Tessier, who had 6 digs. Florida as a team hit 263, which is pretty impressive. Now we jump over to Florida as they were led by Sophia Victoria as she had 24 kills. I was very surprised. I didn't even know who this player was. I was like, who is that? But Sophia Victoria had 24 kills. She did have 11 hitting errors, but as a team, Florida didn't have too many of those outside of Victoria. As, believe it or not, Sophia Victoria actually had half of Florida's hitting errors by herself, which is kind of surprising. Tara Caesar added 10 kills. I was surprised to see Thayer Hall having a quiet night. She only had 6 kills and a hitting percentage of 167. I don't know if she got hurt. It didn't look like she got hurt, as she played all 4 sets. So I imagine this was kind of an off night, or maybe they just wanted to go to Victoria, as maybe Florida State was anticipating Thayer Hall to have a big night, but then they found out that Victoria was bound to have a big night, so I don't know. Marley Montserrat had 50 assists, while Florida missed 14 serves. That was kind of big right there, and they only had 4 service aces. In terms of digs, they had 54 digs. 17 of them went to Maddie McKissock, while Sophia Victoria and Tara Caesar each had 10 digs. As a team, Florida hit 239, which wasn't bad. I thought they would do a lot better, but I guess they just couldn't pull out that big time victory. As Florida State, outside of set 1, hit over 300 in all of their sets. Florida, on the other hand, after they had that blistering first set start, they did not hit. They hit below 300. In set 2, that was probably the worst set they had in terms of hitting percentage, as they hit 100, which is nowhere near good. So there was that for that little matchup. But I know Florida State-Florida is a rivalry. I just didn't think that this was going to be big enough to be considered one. But I saw Florida State's record. I'm like, how did I let this team get by me? Keep in mind, Florida State lost quite a bit of players to transfers and to graduation. So I think the ACC also needs to keep an eye out on Florida State. As for Florida, one of my followers said that Florida is a little underrated or overrated. I kind of agree with that. I don't necessarily fully agree, considering Florida does have some solid players, but they have been losing quite a number of matchups. They lost to Stanford once, they lost to Baylor twice, and now they lost to Florida State. They did bounce back with 2 wins over Coastal Carolina, but it's just Coastal Carolina. It's not the Coastal Carolina of last year when they had Annette Nemeth. So, yeah. All in all, Florida has a lot of work to do, and the SEC, I think, is up for grabs because Kentucky they're starting to get it together as well, because the same night Florida State beat Florida, Louisville defeated Kentucky at Louisville in the Battle of the Bluegrass, which was also another rivalry. That was a great match, by the way. Louisville was able to grind it out. Kentucky still has a lot of work to do, considering they lost quite a number of players to transfer and graduation. So there is that right there. On the topic of rivalries, we also had another big-time rivalry. We had the Holy War between BYU and Utah. This took place in Provo, Utah, at BYU. BYU took the first 2 sets in very close fashion, 25-23. Now, Sec 2, BYU never trailed and there were no ties. But Utah, to their credit, gave them all that they could handle. The first set, there were only 2 ties and 1 lead change. So, all in all, BYU dominated this match. The third set, BYU took in strong fashion, 25-16. There was only 1 tie and 1 lead change. So, all in all, for BYU, I think they are really proving themselves. And keep in mind, last year they had a bunch of freshmen and sophomores. Now those freshmen and sophomores are now sophomores and juniors. BYU was led by Kenzie Kerber, who had 14 kills. Keep in mind also that Kerber is a former Utah player, as she is a graduate transfer, so she got to see her former team in action. And then Kennedy Eschenberg added 12 kills. She only had 1 hitting error. That was the name of the game for BYU. They limited their hitting errors. They only had 18, despite that number being somewhat high. Heather Netting had 9 kills, and Taylin Ballard-Nixon added 7. As a team, BYU hit .299, which is very impressive. Whitney Bauer had 33 assists, while BYU had 3 service aces and only 7 service errors, which isn't bad. In terms of blocks, BYU only had 2 blocks, both of which were solo stuffs. And then in terms of digs, BYU had 42 of them. 16 of them went to Bauer, and 11 of them went to Maddie Allen. So BYU is really coming along nicely. There's a reason why they were chosen to finish first in the West Coast Conference. And BYU is showing that they are a true contender. As for Utah, which lost its second match at that point, they were led by Madeline Robinson, who had 10 kills. Danny Drews had 7 kills, and Zoe Wetherington had 6 kills. Wetherington had a hitting percentage of .308, while Robinson had a hitting percentage of .261. Steph Jankowicz had 15 assists. She actually only played 2 sets, so I imagine something might have happened with Emily. Oh yeah, Emily Smith had 8 assists as well, so I imagine maybe Utah shuffled their lineup because it just wasn't working, or maybe, heaven forbid, something happened with Emily Smith. So I'll have to dig more into that a little bit. Now this statistic kind of blew me away. Utah had 7 service aces to 1 service error. I kind of don't understand that, considering that's a very good serving ratio. It's like, how do you miss only 1 serve and you wind up losing in straight sets? It makes no sense. And then also Utah had 5 blocks. They didn't have a solo stuff, but they had 10 block assists, which total out to having 5 blocks as a team. I don't understand how this team also outblocked BYU, but they wound up losing. It does not make sense. And then in terms of digs, Utah had 15 digs to Vanessa Ramirez, but she was the only player in double digits in terms of digs. And then as a team, Utah hit 163. So Utah's kind of hit a rough patch. They have 2 big matches coming up, as I'll be talking about those in a little bit. But right now, we got the last upset to talk about, and this final upset came in the 5-6-2, aka Long Beach, as Long Beach State took down the University of San Diego, and it was actually no, I won't spoil anything. I'm not going to spoil anything. So I actually went to this match after I had myself a long day. After I had a day of covering a high school boys water polo match. And then I was able to get to Long Beach State on time, so it was quite nice to be able to cover that matchup between San Diego and Long Beach State. Obviously, it didn't go well for San Diego, but you can't really blame them for what happened. As the first set, San Diego got off to a fast start. Like, they were having quite a good amount of success. But Long Beach State, the resilient team that they are, they started to play a little bit better as they took the first set 25-20. There were 5 ties, but only 1 lead change. Like I said, San Diego got off to a hot start, but then Long Beach State started to get it cooking a little. Then in the second set, Long Beach State never trailed as they were just on a roll. I did not believe what I was seeing in that little matchup. As Long Beach State took the second set 25-18, I was very surprised to see them winning that set by that score, because I know Long Beach State has been yearning for a upset, but honestly, I didn't know that if they were going to pull it off. I was like, okay, maybe Long Beach State is going to show us something that we haven't seen. So, Long Beach State was up 2-0 in the match, and I'm thinking, could this one end in a sweep? I doubt it, but what can we do? And then set 3, San Diego finally got together as they took the third set 25-19. There were 4 ties and 1 lead change. Long Beach State led early on, and San Diego took over because they're San Diego. And they're a talented team. Now, the fourth set was actually back and forth. It looked as if Long Beach was going to take the set as they were up 18-14. And then San Diego used a 6-1 run to go up 20, or actually an 8-1 run to go up 22-19. And I'm thinking, okay, this one's going to go 5. But then Long Beach State was able to score 6 out of the last 7 points to take the fourth set 25-23 and the match. Now, in San Diego's defense, there were a few questionable calls that the coach and some of the fans didn't agree with, but most of them did balance it out. And then also, San Diego was coming off of a 5-set win over USC. Unfortunately, Larry, the Trojans unfortunately lost to the Toreros. So I understand maybe San Diego was a little bit gassed, considering, obviously losing a big match to a inner region rival, or winning a big match like that is kind of draining, not just physically but emotionally. But I think for San Diego, I just think that match might have been what hurt them, considering they were just so gassed. They didn't have 24 hours of rest, but that's kind of how their schedule worked. They had USC, then they had Long Beach State afterward, and both of those were road matches, whereas last week they played UCLA, then they played San Diego State, which was also their crosstown rival. So basically, San Diego had the West Coast swing right in the past 2 weeks. Anyway, so Long Beach State was led by Kashana Williams, who had 20 kills. She hit .318, which was very impressive, and she was just swinging for the fences. And as you've probably heard in some of the press conferences that I've been at, she doesn't care on if she's facing the best team in the nation or the worst team in the nation. She's going to put in that work and just do what she can to try and dominate on the court. And I like that in a player. Long Beach State also got a great contribution from Katie Kennedy, who had 16 kills. She only had 2 hitting errors. That was the big impressive thing about her. She only had 2 hitting errors, and she hit .533, which is very, very impressive. Also, Erica Lovett, the freshman, had 9 kills, and she also chipped in 2 service aces, which I'll be getting to in a little bit. Tia Chavira had 37 assists, and she chipped in 4 kills, along with Cameron Bacon, which was some good stuff. Long Beach State had 6 service aces, 4 of which went to Tia Chavira, and 2 of which went to Erica Lovett. They did miss 19 serves, which, as you'll hear in the press conference after I'm done clearing up the stats, I will be talking about. The coach will be talking about that. In terms of blocks, Long Beach State had 7 blocks as a team. They had 1 solo stuff and 12 block assists. And Long Beach State outdug San Diego 49-38 as the Beach had 13 digs from Nicole Hoff, 12 digs from Chavira, and 10 digs from Dylan De La Cruz, who came in off the bench, which was some good stuff. And Long Beach State hit .286. So all in all, it was a very strong match. I think Long Beach State cooled off in that third set, and Kashana Williams was just hitting a high percentage. I was like, this Long Beach team is pretty good. And I'm not saying that just to be biased, but I have had fans tell me that Long Beach State could be a good team. Like one fan told me after the Long Beach State Pepperdine scrimmage that Long Beach State could make noise this season. I'm like, we'll see. I mean, I want them to, but it still remains to be seen. As for San Diego, they were led by Kylie Priest and Grace Froling, who each had 11 kills. Priest hit .286, which wasn't bad. Katie Lukes had 7 kills, while Layla Blackwell had 6 kills. Isadora Turcariol had 26 assists, and in terms of service aces and service errors, San Diego had 5 aces, 2 of which came from Annie Benbow and Alex Hogland, and 1 ace came from Priest, while they missed 13 serves as well. In terms of blocks, San Diego had 11 blocks, 20 block assists, and 1 solo stuff. And in terms of digs, they only had 38, like I mentioned. Annie Benbow had 13. 7 of them also went to Froling. And it just wasn't a good match for them defensively. San Diego also only hit 182. I also should apologize just because I unfortunately did not get an interview with San Diego's coach or the players. Partially because and nothing against Jennifer Petrie, but she did not look happy after the game. Like, she emerged out of the locker room and she looked she did not have the happiest look on her face. And I'm like, I might want to skip this interview with the San Diego coach. But I was the only member of the press to ask questions to the Long Beach State coach and players. Here is me in the press conference with head coach Joy Mackenzie Furbringer.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to start the press conference with an opening statement from head coach Joy Mackenzie Furbringer. Then we'll open up to questions for coach and some of the players. Coach, go ahead.
First I just want to thank all of our fans and all the people that have come out to support us. I can't express how grateful we are that we're playing and have fans out in the stands. The players definitely appreciate their support. Tonight's a real big win for us. Our first win against the top 25. I love the girls, their poise out on the court, their determination, their ability to stick with the game plan. And we talked a lot about finishing our season, preseason, on a win. And this is great motivation, great momentum going into our conference play.
Before I continue, I also should make note that this was Long Beach State's first win over a top 25 opponent since 2016, and it was actually the first under head coach Joy Mackenzie Furbringer. So before Mackenzie Furbringer came along, she did not have a top 25 upset. So that was very impressive that Long Beach State was able to get that. I didn't even know that. So anyway, back to the interview or press conference where I was the only member of the media.
Questions?
Good evening, Joy. So obviously this was a big win over, not like a crosstown rival, but a Southern California interstate rival. Like, how big is this having beaten San Diego? Because they always have gotten the better of you in the past for a certain amount of years.
Yeah, I think a lot of times in the past we run into San Diego in the NCAAs, which we have fallen short making any of those. So this is a big win for our program, a big win for our team. It's our first since 2016, since I've been here at Long Beach State and took over. So, tonight's a big deal, and I want the girls to celebrate and enjoy it, and then we're back to work on Monday.
San Diego obviously has some good hitters like Grace Froling and Kylie Priest. What was the game plan knowing that they were coming off of a 5-set win over USC and their emotions being high and trying to slow them down?
Yeah, for us, it was just handling our side of the net. A lot of it, we knew the game plan against them. We knew their tendencies. The girls did a really good job of stopping their tendencies or playing defense against that. And then we, behind our offense behind Tia, she ran a great offense. We got some momentum in that first and second set, and we're able to close it out in 4. So it's a big deal. Those are big-time hitters, All-Americans, and I believe that, we have, on our team, we've got such great hitters with Kashana hitting at a high percentage and Katie, and, I love that the girls could come out and prove themselves tonight.
The 4th set, it looked like that it was going to go 5, but then you turned it around with a 6-1 run. Like, what were some things you adjusted, and how did you, adapt to San Diego's gameplay?
I think for us, we can play at a high level. We've had we've aired a lot on our serve, and we're working on it, and we're trying to serve aggressively, and that worked for us in the first and second. The third, we missed a lot of serves. They took the third, and then I think the big difference is we got some people that went behind and got behind the line and served. Tia got back there and served some balls in a row, and I think that's the key to our success is if we can eliminate our service errors. We had 6 service aces to 19 service errors, and we still came out of that match. That's, to me, almost nearly impossible against a team like that, but we served aggressive and got them out of system. So I like that we kept aggressive, and then towards that 4th, we were able to close it out, and Tia had some nice serves.
And then Big West Conference play starts next week, and you get one of the top premier teams in Cal Poly. They've been through some ups and downs. What's it going to take to topple them like you did back in 2019 at the Pyramid?
If we continue to progress, stay healthy, this next week, we've made some big steps in the last couple practices, and if we can continue to do that, I think that, and handle our side of the court, I think that we're going to look pretty good coming into this weekend.
All right, Katie.
Okay, so that was the interview with Joy McKenzie Furbringer. Obviously, it was a big victory for her. So next up, I interviewed Katie Kennedy and what it was like putting down the final kill to give Long Beach State the match and how big this match was.
You had the match-clinching kill, and your team managed to upset San Diego. What was that feeling pulling off a win in your own gymnasium?
Every time you get a big win like that, it just feels like it's in slow motion, and you come down after the point and you're celebrating with your teammates, and everyone's just such at a high energy level, and it feels so good. And that's the part of volleyball that, keeps me out there, keeps me playing. That feeling, those big wins, it's so fun. And I think all of us were on the same page. We all looked at each other and said, remember this feeling, because we want to take this feeling into conference and be able to do this against the teams in our conference.
Obviously, there were fans in the stands when it came to this. How did it feel seeing those fans witness an upset being the first under Joy McKenzie Furbringer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can't do it without our fans. They bring us so much energy, and we feed off of that a lot. and it's so fun to hear them just as excited as we are on the court. So yeah, we couldn't do it without them.
And then obviously Kashana had a big game, and Tia, your setter, kept dishing the ball perfectly. What can you say about the offense and how it just clicked perfectly tonight for the most part?
Volleyball is a team effort, and Cash said at the end of the game, we did this as a team. We played as a unit. Our passing was there so Tia could get the sets right there, and then our offense did our job, and the blocking and the defense, it all is cohesive. And when we have games like that, that's when we have these types of upsets. So it was good.
And then next up is Cal Poly. Obviously, you remember them from 2 years ago being your junior year. What's it going to take to take down Cal Poly and start conference playoff 1-0?
Sorry, excuse me. Well, last time we faced Cal Poly, that was a big win at home. So I think that'll be fun to see them again as the first game of conference. And Big West, I'd say, is pretty matched up right now, and it's up for grabs. So we're going to claw to the top and fight for that Big West championship and do whatever it takes.
All right, so that was my interview with Katie Kennedy. Like I said, she had a big night for Long Beach State, and I also mentioned that there were fans in the stands. Members of the Long Beach State men's volleyball team were in the stands, and one of which, her boyfriend, Mason Briggs, was also there cheering on the beach as they were playing San Diego. They were also kind of heckling San Diego in a kind fashion. They weren't heckling them in a mean fashion. Like, they were just having fun and trying to get in their heads, which I think kind of worked. I won't say it fully worked, but it's always good to have that backup and morale boost. So next up, I interviewed Tia Chavira, as it was her turn to be interviewed after the big win over San Diego.
All right, Tia, obviously your team was able to pull off the victory over San Diego. Can you downplay some of the things that happened, and what were some turning points of the match that helped you pull off the win?
Well, it starts by, studying film, I feel like. We go in depth with our coaching about our assignments, and then we go by game plan, and I think we just executed game plan really well. And then if we needed to adjust, we did.
And then obviously San Diego is not one of the more easier teams. You kind of remember them from a couple seasons ago. What can you say about how tough San Diego is and how you were able to counter their toughness?
Well, honestly, I just feel like if we take care of our side of the court, nobody's tough compared to us. I feel like if we're flowing and we're playing our game, then we can beat any team.
And then obviously Kashana and Katie and some of the other players on your team had big nights offensively, but you also got some contributions from Cameron Bacon. What were some great moments that Cameron had when it came to her match tonight?
I think Cameron's doing a great job with getting up on time and just hitting high hands. Like, she had a bunch of clutch plays where she hit high hands and their middle couldn't stop them.
And then also Erica had a big game for you all. She almost got into double digits in terms of kills. What can you say about Erica and how she's progressing?
I think Erica comes in as a strong freshman that just plays her game out on the court. She's very easily to trust and set.
All right, so that was my interview with Tia. As the setter, it is rather tough it is debatably the toughest position in all of volleyball, as the setter basically has to set the offense perfectly. The offense has to go through the setter, so it's kind of like being the quarterback of the team. And Tia is a great leader for Long Beach State, and she's proving her worth. So last up, I briefly, hence the word briefly, interviewed Kashana Williams after the match on the big victory over San Diego. And I say the word briefly because I had to get out of there pretty soon, considering I had to get home ASAP. So, yeah, here's my brief interview with Kashana Williams.
Kashana, obviously this is a big victory for you all, having defeated the number 21 team in the nation. What's going through your mind right now, and what is it going to take to go 1-0 against a tough Cal Poly squad?
Well, regardless of rankings, as long as we do our part and play as a unit, then for the most part, we usually have the game. We play really tough. We beat Cal Poly before, and we could do it again as long as we come on the court with confidence and just play aggressive and play our game. And that's usually how we get teams, when we play our game.
Okay, so yeah, that was basically the interview with Kashana Williams. And like I said, I had to make it brief, and I just had to get out there. In, then out. So it was nothing personal or anything. So that was my interview with all the Long Beach State players and coaches. Before I close the book on week 4 from last week, I also should make note of a player that posted a triple-double, and that was Desiree Sukhov, as she was able to register a triple-double this past week for Fresno State. She had 14 kills, 13 digs, and 10 service aces, as she broke the program record for most service aces in a single match. And it was actually the first triple-double in the program since 2011, and the first as a member of the Mountain West Conference. So good job to Desiree Sukhov, and congratulations to Fresno State. So good stuff for them. I wish them the best going into Mountain West Conference play, and I hope they can do good because they just recently gave me a follow on the Set Point Twitter account. But I digress on that part. So that's going to do it for week 4. Now let's jump into a little bit of week 5. We'll go to the top 25 rankings for this week, and then we'll head to a commercial, and then we'll start the second half of Set Point. So the top 25 of this week. So 25 through 21 consist of San Diego, which dropped from number 21, San Diego at 25, Colorado at 24, Pepperdine at 23, Western Kentucky at 22, and Tennessee at 21. 20 through 16 consists of Penn State at 20, UCLA at 19, Georgia Tech at 18, Florida at 17, and Creighton at 16. 15 through 11 consists of Utah at 15, Stanford at 14, Oregon at 13, Nebraska at 12, and BYU at 11. 10 through 6 consists of Baylor at 10, Minnesota at 9, Purdue and Kentucky are tied for 7th, and Washington at 6th. And then 5 through 1 consists of Louisville at 5, Pitt at 4, Ohio State at 3, Wisconsin at 2, and then the still number 1 team in the nation is Texas, which is absolutely no surprise. Texas did have to go 4-set, almost went 5 with Texas A&M last week, but it goes to show how good Texas A&M is. I mean, they're kind of underrated. Last year was a disappointing season as they had so much promise the year before, coming off of the year before, but Texas A&M gave them all that they could handle. So this week is going to answer a lot of questions when it comes to conference play. So that is going to do it for this week of week number 4. Let's take ourselves a quick little commercial break. When we come back, we'll have the second half of Set Point. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. You are listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hey guys, it's Blake Henley, better known as H-Town Blake to some of you. Happy to announce that Bases Loaded is back in full force. We'll be bringing that high heat every Tuesday night here on IE Sports Radio. So come home, get ready, dig into that batter's box, and see if you can chase that high heat, baby. So we'll be coming to you live with all the stats, all the rundowns, all the division rivalries, and every team that's going to make the playoff push to get to that one and only October and get to the pinnacle of what baseball is, to hoist that Commissioner's Trophy when it's all said and done.
What's good, fight fans? It's your boy, Marcus Los Great, here to give you what you want, here to give you what you need. Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm coming to you live, straight from your mama's basement with a crispy, crisp white tea. They're coming to you live every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IU Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Back with segment number 2 of Set Point. Thank you all for tuning in on this Monday afternoon or Monday evening. I know Monday Night Football is also going on, so I got to compete with that. But if you are listening at this point of the show at 5:54 p.m. Pacific Time, 8:54 p.m. Eastern Time, I really do appreciate you for tuning in to this volleyball talk. It really means a lot. I really pride myself into getting better and working on my craft when it comes to this show and the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. I also should make note of something, is that Set Point will be on next Thursday. I don't know what time, but next Thursday, not this upcoming Thursday, but the following Thursday, Set Point will be turning 2 years old, as I'll be celebrating the 2-year anniversary of Set Point, where I first went on the show or the airwaves of IE Sports Radio, and my first words were, "What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you Set Point." Yep, I remember it like it was yesterday. So I'll be talking about the ups and downs of Set Point and what I've learned as of this point. I also should apologize because I accidentally forgot to give this show a title. I just now titled it Clash of Conferences. Like, I actually was drawing a blank on what else I should title this show. So anyway, now let's jump on into segment number 2. Now that I've got the laundry list out of the way, let's jump on into segment number 2 of Set Point. So let's talk a little high school volleyball. And Gina says, wow, 2 years. And yes, it has been 2 years when I first went on Set Point. So I kind of talked about this on the 100th episode of Set Point and how I originated with Set Point. So I'll be talking about that again when it comes to next Thursday. But let's talk some high school volleyball. So last weekend marked the weekend of the Durango Tournament, and there are quite a number of teams that participated. There were teams from Kentucky, there were teams from Texas, there were teams from Southern California, there were teams from Northern California, there were teams from Utah. There was quite a number of teams that participated in this premier tournament. This is one of the premier tournaments, and a lot of teams from all across the nation participate. So, in the end, Marymount High School from Southern California was able to win the Durango Tournament. And that's a huge deal because I don't even think they've won Durango, at least not to my knowledge, but it's quite an astounding feat that a team from Southern California would win a tournament that huge. The previous year, 2019, Cathedral Catholic won the tournament, and that team hails from San Diego. So the fact that a team from California won it is quite astounding, let alone Southern California. But San Diego section is quite different from the Southern section, or aka the Los Angeles/Orange County section. So I digress in that aspect. But there was no Redondo Union in this tournament. Redondo Union said they wanted to keep it close, and they're one of the premier teams in California. So there's that right there. But Marymount did have quite the dominating run when it came to this tournament. They defeated... Well, first they finished first place in pool play. They swept Edison of Huntington Beach and Galana in pool play. I don't even think, Marymount even dropped a set this tournament, as they swept their first two pool play matches. They swept their qualifying round, aka their crossover game. They swept Mercy Academy. And then in their gold bracket tournament, aka the quarterfinals, they swept Village Christian. Then they swept Cathedral Catholic in the semifinals. Again, that's the reigning champion and a very talented team at that. And then the final, which was very surprising, Marymount swept Mater Dei, which is probably their Southern California rival, or one of them at least. They really dominated Mater Dei, 25-11, 25-14. I didn't think that they would win in that fashion. So Marymount did not drop a set in that entire tournament. And I think they only allowed one team to surpass 20 points. So Marymount is very good as advertised, and they're currently the number one team in the Southern section. Or I also want to say that they're the number one team in the state. And also Marymount has not lost a match all season. So if there's one team that's probably going to win it all, or could possibly win it all, it's Marymount when it comes to their section championship. But don't sleep on Mater Dei. They do have quite a good number of new players, but they do have a great coaching staff. They do have talented players, albeit they only have one Division I bound player in Jordan Schilling, but she has done a great job. She played libero. She's actually 6 feet tall, but then she transitioned from libero to outside hitter. So all in all, for Mater Dei, I think they're still going to do fine within their league and fine within their section. I do also plan to check them out tomorrow. I don't think I'll be doing live updates from the Set Point account, but I will be possibly checking them out. I'll at least check them out for as a spectator. So there's that right there. So that was the Durango tournament. I don't want to spend too much time chatting about high school volleyball just because we want to get to week number 5 of the NCAA women's volleyball season, and then I will send you all on your way because there is Monday Night Football happening between the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers. So unfortunately, and this is a big unfortunately, I can't do Twitter Spaces via the Set Point account. I am very, very heartbroken. Let me just try this one more time. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm failing at technology. Yeah, it's not working. Yeah, I unfortunately don't have access to Twitter Space via the Set Point account, and I am very, very, very heartbroken, and I really wanted to connect with the Set Point account. So, oh well. What can you do? I think it may have to do with the number of followers and whatnot. So I'll have to just make do with being on Spreaker. So anyway, it is now 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern time. So let's jump on into week number 5 of NCAA women's volleyball action. So this week is actually going to be conference week. It's the first week of conference play. So there aren't too many noteworthy matchups today and tomorrow, but on Wednesday we have the first non-conference matchup, and that is number 1 Texas hitting the road to take on Rice. Now, why is this a noteworthy matchup? It's an unranked team versus the number 1 team in the nation. It should be a mismatch, right? Wrong, because Rice has actually been the kryptonite for Texas. As Rice, I don't know what it has been, but in the past, no matter how good or bad Rice has been, they've always found a way to topple Texas. Whether Texas is the number 1 team, number 2 team, number 3 team, or outside of the top 10, Rice has always been that team to topple number 1 Texas. Gina says, I did Twitter Spaces from my regular Twitter account. Maybe that's why. It probably is because I have a lot more followers on my main Twitter account as opposed to the Set Point account. So, I don't know. And either way, I'll figure out why Set Point can't do Twitter Spaces, but it is what it is. So anyway, back to Rice versus Texas. I would not be surprised if Rice actually pulled the upset. I don't know how, but I still think Texas should get the win, just because Texas returns all of their players, and they're such a great team, and I don't see how they lose this one, because Rice is not as good this year. They don't have a true breakout win, and that's kind of their problem. So I think Rice will do good in its conference, which is the Conference USA, but I don't think they'll beat Texas. I think Texas will finally break that curse against them. But don't be surprised if Rice does pull off the upset against Texas. So then also on Wednesday, we have number 15 Utah traveling to number 6 Washington. So Utah has been struggling as of late, having lost to Boise State and BYU as they hit the road to Seattle to take on number 6 Washington. Washington has been consistent, but they did have to go 5 sets with Montana State. They almost lost that match too. But regardless, they did pull off the victory. Their only blemish of the season was their first match against I want to say it was like at the beginning of the season, they were like number 9 Ohio State. But Ohio State is proving that they are really good, considering they started off number 9 and they're currently the number 3 team in the nation, and Ohio State is also undefeated on the season. So gotta take that into consideration too. So all in all, this could be either Utah's breakthrough matchup to try to bounce back, or this could be another speed bump for Washington. So there's that. And then also rounding up the noteworthy matchups on Wednesday is USC at UCLA. Now, when it comes to these two teams, a lot can happen. Like last year, these two teams split the 2 meetings with one another. UCLA defeated USC at Pauley Pavilion, and USC defeated UCLA at Galen. So I would not be surprised if USC pulled the upset, but they have not had that big-time upset or big-time breakthrough win. They almost got it against Creighton, but they kind of blew a 13-10 lead in set number 5. So for USC, this is a huge matchup. They're 4-5 on the season, which is kind of uncharacteristic. Once again, they have not had that big breakout win, and they have lost 3 of their last 5. I'm sorry, not 3 of their last 5, 4 of their last 5, as, once again, they lost to San Diego in 5 sets, and that's kind of tough, as they're traveling to UCLA to take on the Bruins, and UCLA is good as advertised. Yes, they did have that one little loss to San Diego, but San Diego is a solid team, but I use the term solidly because after what transpired on Saturday against Long Beach State, I kind of don't think that at San Diego isn't really the most solid team. At least USC pushed San Diego to 5. This is also going to answer the questions of, is UCLA legit enough to win the Pac-12? I think UCLA has a shot at winning the Pac-12, but I don't think they'll win it. Like, they're a good team, But I don't know if they could stack up to Washington and Stanford and maybe Oregon too. So all in all, for UCLA, this is kind of their first semi-big test. For USC, this is a huge test for them because this, well, other than Kentucky, this is the second highest ranked. This is the highest ranked opponent that they've faced. So, and again, once again, it's a rivalry game. So I imagine USC should come out fired up, but so will UCLA. And now that conference play is begun, this is going to answer the question, is USC for real, or is this just another rebuilding season for the Trojans? And this is also going to answer if UCLA has gotten over the San Diego loss. So there's that. So no noteworthy matchups on Thursday, but on Friday we have quite a good number of matchups. The first matchup we have, and this is probably the top matchup of Friday, is number 3 Ohio State tied for number 7 Purdue. Now Purdue obviously got hammered by Louisville a couple of weeks ago, but other than that, Purdue is coming off of a good victory, a very impressive victory over Tennessee, which I kind of figured they would win that one just because Tennessee isn't quite there yet to pull off another top 10 upset, but honestly, I think Purdue is as good as advertised. Remember, they returned a majority of their team. As for Ohio State, they were coming off of a 5-set win over Notre Dame. Keep in mind that they played Notre Dame twice, and they swept Notre Dame the first time at South Bend, Indiana, and then Ohio State then had to go 5 with Notre Dame in Columbus. So I saw the second matchup between Ohio State and Notre Dame. I actually called it on Wellington Sports Radio, which is the sister stations of IE Sports Radio. So Ohio State's kind of going to have their work cut out for them. They've only lost 4 sets all year. 1 was to Washington, 1 was to Texas State, and 2 were to Notre Dame, as they do face a very tough and talented Purdue team. I wouldn't be surprised if Purdue got the better of Ohio State, just because Purdue has a very good team, a team that they return all of their players in, and this is a team that I think can make some noise. Purdue kind of struggled posting that big breakout win outside of Ohio State, so we'll see if Purdue can break through this year. I wouldn't be surprised if Purdue won, though. So the next noteworthy matchup on Friday is number 4 Pitt at North Carolina. Now, North Carolina and Pitt have one thing in common. They're both in the ACC, obviously, and they also are undefeated. Yes, North Carolina is undefeated. I did not think I'd be saying that, considering North Carolina, they have a solid team, but last year they had a bunch of injuries and transfers and opt-outs. So for North Carolina to be undefeated as of right now is very impressive, especially when they defeated Michigan after, I think they were down like 22-18 in the 4th set, and then they managed to go on a 7-0 run to take the 4th set, and then they eventually won the 5th set. I really think North Carolina has what it takes to make noise, but against Pitt, I don't think they defeat Pitt. They're not going to beat Pitt, that's for sure. It really sucks that one team has to lose, but I have to go with Pitt for this one. Pitt is a very good team. Chinazi Ende, Kayla Lund, those two have been outstanding for the Panthers. I would not be surprised to see Pitt sweeping North Carolina, but I would like to see North Carolina show some grit and determination. Pitt has been pushed, but they haven't been defeated, so we'll see if the Panthers can stay undefeated or if the Tar Heels can actually pull off the upset. So the next noteworthy matchup on this Friday is number 15 Utah at number 24 Colorado. This is the Rumble in the Rockies rivalry, as Utah will be hitting the road to Boulder to take on Colorado. Now, Colorado is currently ranked. Let's get that out of the way. But I don't think they've been impressive. Like, they don't have any wins that say, hey, Colorado deserves to be ranked. Utah, despite their struggles, have at least played some stiff competition. Even some unranked competition has been quite stiff. And then they've also played a few ranked opponents. And then they also have that win over Nebraska. So the road win over Nebraska, might I add. So for Utah, once again, they have a gauntlet this weekend. Like, they have Washington, then they have Colorado. Like, Jiminy Christmas, that's kind of rough for them. But all in all, for Utah, I think they should win this little matchup, because it is a rivalry matchup, and while Colorado is good, I don't think they're on the level of Utah. Like, Utah can't possibly mess this up. I know it's a rivalry match, and I know anything can happen, but it's Colorado. They have no true standout victories, man. Like, you can't expect me to believe that Colorado can actually upset Utah. I'd be surprised, but we'll have to see. And then also on Friday, we have... Now, these are basically going to be unranked versus ranked, or unranked versus unranked. So, next up we have Michigan at number 9, Minnesota. Now, Minnesota just recently won the Diet Coke Classic, which I guess was in Minnesota. But I'll also say this about Minnesota. They have had their fair share of struggles, but they did impress me in the Pac-12 Big Ten Challenge. They defeated Stanford, and they also defeated Oregon. So for Minnesota, I think this should be, I wouldn't say an easy win, but I think this should be a win for them regardless. I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan pushed them, but I don't really see Michigan winning. If they do win, cool, but for Minnesota, I don't think they'll have too much trouble. They obviously have had their struggles, but I think they're starting to get it together. And that tough schedule that they've scheduled in the non-conference aspect should do them wonders going into this season, going into the Big Ten, because there are a lot of good Big Ten teams this year. It's not just Wisconsin. It's Ohio State, you've got Minnesota, Penn State's still up there, Nebraska's still up there despite struggles, and yeah. I also should make note of another noteworthy matchup on Wednesday. We have, I think it's Cal at Stanford, if I'm not mistaken. If not, it's the other way around. Regardless, Stanford and Cal face one another on Wednesday. Now, it's a Cal at Stanford. So, now, obviously, Cal is not on the level of Stanford, but it's still a little rivalry match. It's like a crosstown rival between two Northern California teams. And I think Gina can basically vouch for me that this should be a somewhat noteworthy match. I think both of those teams are going to love facing one another, and I think it's going to be a very fun match between Cal and Stanford. We'll see, though. We'll see. So back to Friday's matchups. Next up, we have number 12 Baylor at Kansas State. I also have this down for Saturday's noteworthy matchup as well. For Kansas State, they are a solid team. I don't think they're a great team. They're certainly not on the level of Baylor and on the level of, Texas. That's for sure. But for Kansas State, I think they have a okay team. It's not bad. Like, looking at Kansas State's schedule, they're 9-2, which they've only lost twice. They lost to Nebraska and they lost to Pepperdine, both of which are ranked. Now, obviously, K-State has not pulled off any impressive victories, but that could change if they manage to upset Baylor. It is a home game. Both of these games are home games for Kansas State. And they also have the talented Aaliyah Carter, who, despite her being only 5'9", she is a force to be reckoned with. So, for Kansas State, if they do want to upset Baylor, they are going to kind of have to ride the coattails of her, and then they're also going to have to ride the coattails of some of their other players as well, because looking at their statistics as of right now, I think K-State has what it takes to at least challenge Baylor. Like, Baylor isn't without their weaknesses, that's for sure. As, once again, Aaliyah Carter does lead the team in kills with 175. Haley Warner has 118 kills behind her. So, all in all, K-State's young team from last year that was the first four out in terms of the NCAA tournament should maybe give Baylor a good battle, but Baylor's starting to play some good volleyball as of late, so I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears took this one. So, but it's all a good little matchup for the Big 12. So I think it's the best matchup the Big 12 can find. So just saying. And then also on Friday we have. I'm sorry. I'm still on Friday. I thought I was looking at Saturday's matchups, but the last Friday matchup we have is Cal Poly at Long Beach State. Now, obviously, I don't mean to sound biased, but this is obviously going to be a great matchup, just because, first of all, Cal Poly has been through their ups and downs, including their home winning streak being snapped, as they take on Long Beach State in the Pyramid. The last time these two teams met at the Pyramid, Long Beach State won in 4 sets on their senior night. I also should note that Cal Poly, one of my good friends, Daniel Gilman, is the play-by-play announcer for Cal Poly Volleyball, which is really cool. And honestly, I think he's going to be at this matchup. I'd have to double-check with him. And if he is at this matchup, I can't wait to hear his broadcast of this. So I think this is going to be a true test for Long Beach State. They are coming off of that big victory over San Diego, as Cal Poly is also looking to go 1-0 in Big West Conference play. I think that it's going to be a very good matchup between both these teams. I wouldn't be surprised if it went 5. I can imagine that there will be a lot of raucous fans, especially students, especially since this is a conference opener. So we'll see if Long Beach State can continue its good fortune, or if, Cal Poly can finally get that, I wouldn't say breakout victory that they've been waiting for, but they could finally get a good victory that they could feel proud of. So we'll see what happens. So then now we'll jump to Saturday. I already talked about Baylor, Kansas State, but another noteworthy matchup on Saturday is Arkansas at number 21 Tennessee. The two also play each other on Sunday. So for Arkansas and Tennessee, the two have one thing in common. They both were the first 4 out of the NCAA tournament last year. So both these teams are doing all that they can to try to get the win and start conference play off on a high note. So Arkansas, they certainly aren't like the worst team. I don't really think they haven't really pulled off a solid victory. Like, they're 9-2, yes, but their 2 losses were to Little Rock of the Sun Belt Conference and Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech was obviously a very talented opponent, and that was of the SEC ACC crossover. So Arkansas, surprisingly, actually has a matchup against LSU on Wednesday. So they're going to be kicking off conference play very early than Tennessee will. So for Arkansas, this is kind of going to be a challenge for them. I wouldn't be surprised if they push Tennessee. But you look at the firepower that Tennessee has. They return practically all their players, and they have 2 talented transfers. One of which is Nicole Shanahan. I don't think she's related to Kyle Shanahan, but I digress. And then they also have the transfer from Tennessee in Brianna Runnels. So all in all for Tennessee, they could make some noise in the SEC. But first they have to get past a very scrappy Arkansas team. And a win for Arkansas would be huge for them. For Tennessee, starting off 2-0 would absolutely be the best thing for them. But for Arkansas, they're starting off with 3 SEC games. So it's kind of going to be interesting to see if Arkansas can pull off the victory at Tennessee. And then Tennessee's first true test will be against South Carolina at South Carolina on the first full week of October. So if Tennessee wants to make the NCAA tournament, which I think they definitely can, they're going to need to start winning. They will need to win some of these SEC games they only have 2 losses on the season. One was to Pitt in 5 sets, and then the other was to Purdue, in which they wound up losing in straight sets. But those are 2 top 10 talented teams. And then Baylor was also a top 10 team until Tennessee kind of knocked them for a loop. So all in all, for Tennessee, I think they should go 2-0 this weekend, but don't sleep on Arkansas. Also, don't sleep on LSU. I am still a believer in what LSU can do, considering LSU has quite a good number of talented players returning, and they also have Kylie DeBerg, which I'm sure she's eventually going to start to get adapted to the LSU gameplay eventually. As LSU is 4-5, their losses were to Michigan, Iowa State, Penn State, Rice, and Troy. 4 of those 5 losses are rather acceptable, but I don't know about the loss to Troy, but what can you do? Their wins, on the other hand, aren't really too impressive. Their wins were against Northern Arizona, Oregon State, Sam Houston, and Samford. Nothing too much to ride home about, but we'll see if LSU can actually defeat Arkansas in their conference opener. For LSU, they have Alabama on September 25th, which is a Saturday, and unlike most of these teams, they don't start the whole back-to-back process of facing one opponent until next week when they play Mississippi State. So for LSU, I expect them to kick it into overdrive when it comes to SEC play. Otherwise, they will kind of have disappointed me. Just because I said that LSU is a team to watch out for this season. So there's that. And then we jump to we have one more matchup in terms of unranked versus unranked. So Saturday we have the unranked matchup between Northwestern and at Illinois. So for these are rival teams. These are teams from Illinois, and this is quite the underrated rivalry in the Big Ten. And I think this will be a fun little test for both teams. Like Northwestern, obviously trying to make the NCAA tournament for the first time since God knows when. Illinois trying to get back to the echelon of when they were dominant, when they had Jordan Poulter and Michelle Branch Huntley, or is it Hantley? Regardless, Michelle Branch. But all in all, for these two, Northwestern and Illinois, I think this will be a great little rivalry game, and this could set the tone for the Big Ten on Saturday. So, could set the tone for both these teams, mind you. So, speaking of Big Ten, we jump to Sunday, and we have number 3 Ohio State hitting the road to Happy Valley to take on number 20 Penn State. Now, last year Ohio State swept the season series against Penn State. For Penn State, they haven't really been as spectacular as they have been in the past. They have struggled a bit, and part of it is because they did lose quite a number of players to graduation, but they also lost some key players to transfers as well, as they haven't really pulled off a big time victory. They're 7-3, but against ranked opponents, they are a whopping 0-3. As the Penn State actually kicks off Big Ten play at Rutgers before heading back home to University Park to take on Ohio State. I said Happy Valley, but it's University Park. I guess that's what it is, though. So there's that. But for Ohio State, this is another big test for them. They go from playing Purdue to eventually playing Penn State, which is quite a brutal gauntlet. But if Ohio State does go 2-0, then they deserve to be the number 3 team in the nation. They are now going to get tested. They did beat Washington early on in the season, but they haven't had too much stiff competition. So all in all, for Ohio State, I think this is just another test for them, and I think they can, if for some odd reason they can defeat Penn State and Purdue, then they totally deserve to be number 3 in the nation, right behind Ohio State. But ever since they defeated Washington, they haven't faced any stiff competition, other than Notre Dame, of course. But Notre Dame, to me, I think, is much better than its record indicates. So there's that. So try to speed things along a little bit. So next matchup we have is Florida State at number 5 Louisville. So this matchup is noteworthy just because Florida State is starting to put themselves on the radar in the ACC. Louisville is still undefeated, and they are in the top 5. For Louisville, this isn't a big test, but this is kind of a test to make sure they don't get upset, because the ACC as a whole is very impressive. Other than Notre Dame, of course, but they've faced some stiff competition, so we can give them a break. For Florida State at Louisville, I imagine Louisville's going to win. Like, the only way Florida State pulls off the victory is if they get another big-time match from most of its players, and also if the players have another big reason to win. So there's that right there in terms of Florida State at Louisville. We've got 2 more matchups to go, and then we'll send you all on your way. So the next matchup is the Apple Cup, number 6 Washington at Washington State. So this is going to be a very fun matchup. So despite Washington State having a not so great record, you have to look at the body of work for Washington State, as Washington State has faced a lot of stiff competition in terms of their non-conference play. And once again, you have to, obviously their record isn't what they want it to be. Like, they wound up losing their first 4 matches in a row, but all those teams were NCAA tournament teams, minus South Carolina, which South Carolina really impressed in their first week, but kind of fell off. Ever since they lost to UNLV in the South Carolina Classic, Washington State has wound up winning their next 6 matches, as they were able to defeat UC Santa Barbara twice, once in 3 sets and once in 4 sets. But for Washington State, they also play Colorado as well, so that's also something to note as for Washington State. This is going to be a big gauntlet for them, but the good news for Washington State is they have a 4-game homestand. So they're back home after a business trip to good old Santa Barbara. But Washington State's true test begins, as this team was picked to finish 5th. At first, it didn't look like they deserved to finish 5th, but now it's looking like they're starting to pick it up in terms of their offense and their overall gameplay. So I think for Washington State, they're going to have to come out ready to go against Washington and Colorado. But if they can go at least 1-1, then Washington State should be fine in terms of the Pac-12. And then the last, but certainly not least, matchup to watch for this weekend is number 19 UCLA at number 14 Stanford. Now, this is going to be a very fun matchup between these two teams, considering Stanford has been playing great volleyball, and I think they're back. UCLA, on the other hand, is obviously coming off of a big win over, I think, Butler. Regardless, or I'm sorry, I think it was Howard they played. I have to double check, but they are coming off of a win after they lost to San Diego. Yeah, it was Butler, and they also beat Milwaukee this past week. It was the Bulldog Brawl. I love that name, by the way. And also UCLA defeated San Diego State, too. So UCLA has won 3 in a row. Ever since they defeated Georgia Tech, they did lose that matchup to San Diego, but like I said, they've won 3 in a row, and they are playing USC to start conference play. So for UCLA, this is kind of going to be a bigger test for them. This is probably the biggest test they will have faced this season. So there's that for Stanford and UCLA. This is the tale of 2 teams of possibly seeing which team will come out on top. Like, Stanford on paper, to me, looks like they'll win this match. But you can't discount UCLA. Like, UCLA has the strong arm of Mac May. And also, they do have the great coaching wisdom of Mike Sealy. So you can't sleep on UCLA, nor can you sleep on Stanford. So we'll see what happens between those two teams. But if UCLA wants to win, they can't just bank on Mac May to like get kill after kill after kill. They got to get some of their other players involved, like Charity. Like Charity, they got to get her involved as well. And then they also got to get Anna Dodson involved. I'm blanking on Charity's last name. Charity Looper, that's her name. So yeah, Charity Looper, and they also got to get Anna Dodson involved. So all in all for UCLA, it's going to have to be a team sport. They can't just bank on one player to carry the team. So if they could do that, then they'll be golden. But I would have to put money on Stanford. You're welcome, Gina G. But all in all, that's going to be it for the matchups to watch for. And that's going to do it for tonight's episode of Set Point. I know we went over 90 minutes, but what can you do? There's a lot of volleyball being played, and it's a very fun time because it's conference play. It means the season is starting to come down to the wire, but not quite. We're still in only week 5. But all in all, that's going to do it for Set Point. You know what time it is. It is time to drop that beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you all once again for tuning in to Set Point. I really do appreciate you. If you listen live, I appreciate you. If you listen via the playback, I appreciate you. If you listen in the wee hours of the morning, I appreciate you. If you're listening at all, I appreciate you. Thank you to the chat room, Mr. Davidson Crooks, Mr. Larry B, and Miss Gina G. Gina says, another great show, Teran. I appreciate you. She will be coming on tomorrow at 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern time. So definitely do check out Gina G and reppin' to NorCal Sports. She does a fantastic job, even though she's probably going to rub it in my face when it comes to the Giants and the Dodgers. All of that said, for everyone here at IE Sports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. You all have yourselves a great week. Remember, Set Point will be back next Thursday at a time to be determined for the 2-year anniversary of Set Point. You all have yourselves a great night. I will see you this weekend for the SoCal Central Sports Show. Peace!